Silent Hill 3. Well, you know, most people skip the first part, and say the second part is the best. Somehow they ignore the third as well. But from my perspective, both the second part and the third part are really good, and maybe almost 20 years later I decided to replay Silent Hill 3. The game is tied, the story is tied to the first game. Sadly, I didn't manage to play it back in time, and now it's quite hard to play the game. There hasn't been any remake or stuff like this, so I cannot comment that much on this aspect. You play with this teenage girl who starts in this shopping mall, and then transitions from the real world to the Silent Hill universe. It's quite strange since she is not in Silent Hill, but still experiences the craziness of Silent Hill. I had some complaints about Silent Hill 2 since the graphics look a bit, let's say, dated. But somehow Silent Hill 3 looks adequate to new games, and I didn't feel very disconnected. Okay, at times, very rarely, since you play mostly indoors and mostly during nighttime. But at times, you see the sky, and it looks a bit unrealistic. It's like putting some low resolution image, and yeah. But otherwise, the cutscenes, the characters look quite okay. I would say their facial expressions during cutscenes look believable, and I think the game holds quite well to today's standards. For the most part, the game is quite similar to Silent Hill 2. Not much has changed in terms of mechanics. Even this float inventory, let's say, pause menu is still there. You don't have quick actions like picking potions through some short key, or you always have to go to the start screen and you press start, and you have to press B button on the Xbox controller to go back instead of pressing start 2 times. So yeah, some of the problems still persist. Even the camera is still quite bad, but I would say a bit better than the last one. Fighting, yeah, still not good, but a little bit better. there is no way to cycle through enemies, and if you're fighting multiple enemies, it's quite the burden to pick the correct opponent. You have a bit more variety in terms of weapons. You have some katana, you have the pipe, you have some knife, which is quite useless. You have some mace, which is heavy and slow, but deals more damage. In terms of firearms, you have like some pistol, the shotgun, the Uzi. Also, you have some taser, which brings enemies down to the ground and you can kick them. Now, in terms of enemies, they're a bit different this time around. Only the nurses are the same, but you have different enemy types. I would say they're quite more annoying, especially the dogs. Since if you want to explore the town, they chase you, and it's not like these static enemies in Silent Hill 2, and you can walk right past them. Some new addition to this game is there are like some boss fights. Okay, you had this in 2, but here it's more prominent. Now, due to the camera and bad fighting system, it's good that they kept these bosses at a minimum. Now, somehow, the story of Silent Hill, like the enemies, were very tightly tied to the psychological enemy aspects of the game. Here it's more, okay, yeah, the creatures and the designs are quite bizarre and they tie into the universe quite good, but still I would say they look a bit out of place sometimes. Even I would say that the game at times feels not so Silent Hill like. It's more like Resident Evil or something like this. Even the gameplay, like you run out of ammunition quite often, so you have to run past enemies and skip fights. Otherwise, it's not possible. In the first game, I played on normal difficulty and I had a lot of ammunition. I had a lot of health packs on normal. Now, I had some difficulties at times. But overall, it seems, I don't know, at least from my point of view, the puzzles were more interesting and somehow in terms of gameplay, I had a bit more fun with this one. Also the visuals. I don't know, I think both 2 and 3 have some strengths and weaknesses. Like 2 was more focused on the town. Here it's more, how to say, Silent Hill 3 looks a bit like some Marilyn Manson video, which is, yeah, if you watch The Beautiful People, yeah, at times it feels like watching this video by Marilyn Manson. So the game is quite disturbing. It starts disturbing and it gets more and more disturbing. I mean, there is blood coming from the walls, and yeah, I would say it's if you like such stuff, this is your game. Okay, as usual, the music is outstanding. I don't have any complaints here. Not that many cutscenes. The game focuses more on the gameplay. The characters. There are several characters, and I feel they're quite okay. I would say even that compared to the first part, I like these characters a bit more. There is some detective, there is some crazy guy, there is some witch, let's say. The game focuses on more teenage the teenage backstory of the main character, the troubled youth and the problems. Also, as I mentioned, the game goes back quite a lot to the events in the first part of the game, of the series. But if you haven't played the first one, it's okay. It's not like you will not understand the story. What I like about this story is that Silent Hill 2 is more psychological, tied more to the psyche of the main character here. The game focuses more on the, let's say, Silent Hill lore. Let's say the mythology and the gods and stuff like this. So I would say two quite different games in terms of story. The story here is more straightforward. It's not like the first game where there are like some big surprises, and it's more like psychological. Here it's more like Resident Evil, let's say 2 or 3 type of horror. I would say towards the end of the game, the game is disturbing, but the horror aspect is a bit lacking, I would say. Maybe I got used to the enemies or stuff like this, but Silent Hill 2 remained like more horror till the end. Here it's more like, as I said, a bit more horror at the start, and then more action oriented towards the end of the game. You face more enemies, and even the character, like at first the character is quite afraid by the enemies, then it's like, okay, I can do everything, time to end it all, I can do it. It's, yeah, the psychological stuff is a bit missing towards the end of the game. What I like about this game is that, let's say, the second part is more oriented towards the town, and it gets a bit more repetitive. Like, you've seen this multiple times, you go through the town. Here it's, yeah, you still go into some offices, like construction sites, but you get into the metro, you have the shopping mall, you have let's say some amusement park, and you get to experience the, let's say, the alternate world. I think the game is a bit more varied. Now, you go to Silent Hill towards the end of the game, and you can even explore some of the old sites with better graphics, and that's really cool. Whether you like the first one or the third one, it's, I don't know, it's up to you. As I said, both games are quite good. It doesn't mean that one is better than the other just because of this or that. I would assume that most guys will prefer the second one just because of, let's say, a bit of a more interesting story. I mean, Silent Hill 3 is more like this cult and, you know, the religious aspects, which we have seen many times before, whereas the second part had a bit more original story. But as I said, the third one even has more reading, because the second part didn't have that much material here. The story is more rich, let's say, a lot more facts. Some of the annoyances. Well, as I said, you run out of ammo, I would say, quite often. You cannot kill everyone, and sometimes you have to fetch some items to solve some quests. And one big annoyance, just to go to some other topic, is the map system. Okay. At some point, there are some levels where you don't have the map. Now, I guess the developers wanted to build some suspense, but navigating this game without a map is, I don't know, I would say it grinded my nerves, because these days you have the quick map and navigation. Even like if you remember in Dead Space, you can set these markers and you can navigate. I don't think that you should remove the map just to feel lost and using this as a horror element. It becomes annoying. And thankfully there are 2 levels which are like this. Now, saving, similar to the previous game, is, you have these checkpoints. You cannot save at any point. You don't have quick saves or stuff like this. Now, some guys will say, okay, this brings to the horror. I would say this is quite annoying. I would say, give me an option whether to save at any point or just give me some game mode where I can choose not to save and use the checkpoint system. Otherwise, your electricity might run out, or you might be in a hurry somewhere. Sometimes, even when I played the game crashed several times, and I had to replay some levels. At one point I killed all the enemies, which were quite difficult, and I had to replay it, and it was quite annoying, just because the game crashed. Uh, as I said, at times there are many enemies. You cannot kill them all, but at the same time you are trying to solve some puzzles. You want to acquire some items, and it gets quite annoying that these guys are always in your way and preventing you to think about stuff. Okay, so some players might say, okay, this is thinking under pressure. Maybe you are right. Depends what player you are, what type of player you are. There is this aspect of the flashlight. If you put on your flashlight, you attract enemies. If you turn it off, you can sneak past enemies. But then again, you want to acquire some items, so if you don't see where these items are, it becomes quite problematic. Now, the character turns their attention to some items of interest, but if you're running from enemies, then it's quite easy to miss some items, and then you have to go back and find these items. And these are the mechanics, the core mechanics, like find the map, explore each and every room, acquire all the necessary items, solve the puzzles, and go forward. Not much else in terms of gameplay. But I would say puzzles are quite fun, and I never felt very annoyed, maybe at some points in the game. Okay, like towards the end of the game, there is one section where you have some, let's say, you have to go through some section as quick as possible. And I died several times, but that was the only difficult section. One probably other problem is let's say figuring maybe 2 or 3 times, let's say, what to do. Let's say I was in some specific section, and usually the map shows where are the doors where you can enter, and you know what areas are blocked. But in one section the doors were not shown on the map, and I had to walk around for quite a lot of time until I figured out what's going on. And there is one section, without going into spoilers, but it's quite a contra logic. It goes against the logic of any game, how to progress further. But there are not many events like this.